So we're in pursuit of understanding how faith works according to what Jesus taught. And we've looked at two Gentiles who Jesus said had exceptional faith. And we saw that they had deep personal humility and unusual spiritual insight. And therefore, Jesus said they had exceptional faith. This time, we're going to look at the closest followers of Jesus who, although they spent a lot of time with him over a 3 or 4 year period, they had less spiritual insight than the two Gentiles did. And we'll see that in 3 illustrations this time. Jesus was out in the boat with his disciples, and he fell asleep in the stern, and the winds and the waves came up, and his disciples were terrified, and they were trying to man the boat, and finally they came running to him, and they woke him up. And here's what the scripture says in Mark chapter 4. Jesus woke up and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Silence, be still." And the wind died down and it became perfectly calm. And he said to them, "Why are you so cowardly? Do you still have no faith?" And they became very afraid and were saying to one another, "Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" So who is this, they asked. They didn't understand that this was God in the flesh. I think they understood that he was a Messiah and they called him the Son of God, but I don't think they really grasped that he was God in the flesh. And so they didn't have the insight to understand that. The next time they were out in the boat, Jesus wasn't with them, but he came walking on the water toward them and in the night, and they thought it was a ghost, and they cried out for fear. And Jesus says, "Calm down, it's me." And in Mark chapter 6, it says Jesus got into the boat with them, and the wind stopped, and they were utterly amazed, for they had not gained any insight about the loaves, but their heart was hardened. So hardened heart, we'll look at that in more detail as we go down the road a bit, but just suffice it to say that a hardened heart means that there's no, it demonstrates a lack of spiritual insight. It's like being blind physically, it's like being blinded spiritually as well. So they didn't have spiritual insight is what he's saying, and they should have made a connection between his miracle over nature by taking a small boy's lunch and feeding thousands of people with it. But they didn't make that connection. They didn't even connect back to the other time they were in the boat and he stilled the sea. They were just amazed again. And so they weren't learning anything. And there's a reason for that we'll discover. But let's look at this third illustration. Jesus was teaching people, and he taught them, saying that it's not what goes into your mouth that defiles you, but it's what comes out of your mouth, because what comes out of your mouth is from your heart, and what's in your heart is a true measure of a person, and what their spirituality is like, what their motives are, etc. So and his disciples came to him and said, "Do you know that the Pharisees were offended by what you said?" And Jesus said this in Matthew 15, "Let them alone. They are blind guides of the blind. And if a blind man guides a blind man, both will fall into a pit." Now Peter answered and said to him, "Explain the parable to us." And Jesus said, "Are you still lacking in understanding also?" So here again, his disciples were not understanding. And some would say that God supernaturally kept them from understanding, but that doesn't make any sense, that Jesus would chide them for having a lack of understanding, and yet he would be the one who's responsible for hiding the truth from them. So there's a reason why they didn't understand the truth. They didn't understand the parables he was teaching. They didn't understand the miracles that he was doing. There was a lot that was confusing to them. And I'd like to suggest to you that it was their pride, their lack of humility, that was the reason for their lack of spiritual understanding. So we'll take a look at that humility issue next time we get together. Thank you.